Okay, so we're ready to get started. Let's do a sound check to make sure we're good. Okay, I'm gonna turn the music down a touch. All right. Okay, great. I think that's good. Let's get started. So I like to begin with the Ba Chang Gong, which is it's basically a form of Chinese yoga that they often use before doing practices like meditation, qigong, tai chi. Just loosens up the whole body, and I love to do it before yoga because I find that I can really get more out of the poses at the beginning because I'm already a little bit warmed up. So with the feet about hip width apart, first movement is to look to the right, come on the balls of the feet. And then looking forward, heels down. Look to the left, come up. And look forward, heels down. Looking right, come up. Center and left. Back to center. Keeping the heels down, look up. Center, down. Center, up. Center, down. Back to center. Now leaning the head to the right. And then leaning the head to the left. And then lean the head to the right again. This time, take the chin up a bit. And then take your chin down a bit. Come back to the center. Lean the head to the left. Take the chin up a bit. And then down a bit. And back to the center. And half circles with the head. And back to center. Take your thumbs now in a light fist. And then the elbows bent, roll the shoulders back. Big shoulder rolls. And then forward. Big shoulder rolls. And then release the arms. Now shifting to the left foot, lift the right. Shifting to the right foot, lift the left. And back to center. Big arm circles forward. And then back. Thumbs in the light fist, elbows out, circle in at the elbows. Other way. And interlacing the fingers, wrist rolls. Other way. Then some waves. Reverse. And then rubbing the palms. Hands to the kidneys, take the hips around. Other way. And back to center. Shifting to your left foot, right leg comes across, opens out 3 times. And inwards. Another leg, opening out. And then inwards. And heels together, toes together, rub the palms. Bend the knees, rub the knees. Now keep the knees together, take them around. Other way. And standing up, ankle rotations. Other way. Other foot. Other way. And then heels together. Toes out, lift the toes, relax the arms and shoulders. And gently twist side to side. And back to center. Now take your heels out and your feet parallel hip width apart. It's like you're on some narrow train tracks. Bend your knees, drop the tailbone. Really ground yourself. This is a grounding exercise, but also to strengthen and massage the feet. So now we rock forward and back without lifting the toes or the heels. Really grounding. This one's really nice to do outside with your feet in the grass. Although generally they recommend wearing footwear if you're doing Qigong outside in Tai Chi. And then coming back to the center. From here we lift one leg with both arms, then the other. This is called the Shanghai Hospital Walk. And then this is Elephant Wags its trunk. And back to the center. And now we've loosened up the whole body, so we're just going to shake it out. So shaking out the fingers, then the arms, and then we take a little jump, shake it out. And this is something that animals naturally do in the wild to release tension and stress from the body. They just shake their body out. They don't even realize what they're doing, but it actually clears the nervous system. Okay, we're going to get started with our practice. Just going to angle the camera a little bit down. Light out of the way. Okay. Great. Now we're going to start in a wide-legged child's pose. I have a bit to say for some beginner students today, but you can listen from the pose, so I'll get you in it first. So knees wide, big toes are close together or touching. You sit back as much as you can to your heels. You might not sit all the way back. And then slide the hands forward and rest the forehead. Now I recommend working with your elbows lifted if you can. When doing this pose at the beginning of your practice, you want to almost be like warming up for down dog through the arms in this pose. Now I'm going to sit up just so that you can hear me better, but please maintain that pose for a little while. So we're going to be going through a very, I wouldn't say easy yoga sequence, but it's going to be very accessible. So if you're new to yoga, you're going to be able to do it quite easily. If you've been doing yoga for a while, you'll also be able to access it, but also you'll be able to turn it up, make it a little bit more challenging for yourself if you need to. So work at your own pace, take your time. One of the ways that you can make the practice a little bit more challenging is to move through the poses more swiftly. And one way that you can make the practice, on the other hand, much easier is to kind of procrastinate getting in through the poses. Then you spend less time in the poses. And if your capacity is to not be able to hold them as long, then that's great, right? You just take your time moving through as you can. Plus, I can't see you, so I don't know how much of the poses you're holding or not, so you can get away with a lot. But just do your best, listen to your body first and foremost, make sure that you put safety before any other goals in yoga. And let's get started now. So coming up onto all fours, let's get into some cat-cow. Inhale, tilting the belly down and forward. Exhale, lifting the belly up and relax the head down. Continuously moving with the breath. So one thing that I've noticed in a lot of beginner students, but also it's a common struggle for all of us, but the hamstrings are usually the first real obstacle to doing poses safely and with good alignment. That's why I recommend getting a yoga block and strap, because it allows you to bring alignment into the pose when you don't have the flexibility to get into a good alignment. So if you can get a block and a strap for next class, that would be a great addition. Now let's bring the hands a bit wider. We're going to take some hip circles here. Some people love these, some people not so much. You can keep them whatever size you like though. So if you find it's not comfortable for your knees at all, just take it smaller. If you find that you want to really go deep in the hips, you can make it bigger. Make sure you go both ways. And then let's come forward into a kneeling push-up position. And we want a straight line all the way from the knees to the crown of the head. Common positions that go out of alignment easily here is for the head to hang down. You can see how that doesn't look as good as this in terms of alignment and structure. Another way is for the hips to either sag down or to be up too much. So straight forward. And then we're going to lower to the floor from here. Try to do that by pressing the elbows back and lowering down. Now to free up tension in the chest, this is an easy chest opener. We reach the left arm out to the side and then peel up the right side of the body. And I like to imagine almost like I'm trying to reach for something with my left hand to keep a lot of consciousness there and get that extra reach. I like to relax my head down, but you can hold it up too, which helps to tone the neck. Okay, now come to flat. From there, we're going to change sides. So left hand slides in, right hand out. And if there isn't enough space, you can bend your elbow. Sometimes in class, we are pretty close to our neighbors. But probably at home, you can reach out, peeling up the left side now. Okay, coming back to flat. Now from here, bring the hands beside the chest, elbows in. Keeping the neck long, curl up into what we call a light cobra. The reason why it's light and not just cobra is that we're peeling up using just our back muscles, and we're only coming up a little bit. So you should be able to hover your hands in this position because you're not using your arms to lift. But I don't recommend keeping them hovered because there's a pressing into the floor that is beneficial for the shoulders. But once in a while, it's good to hover them just to show that you're not using your arms and to feel that independence from the arms. Now from here, we're gonna, if you've been doing this a while, if you know upward dog, you can come into that. Otherwise, press back into all fours. We're gonna tuck the toes under. Hips start to go back. Keep the knees bent. This is a bent knee downward dog. I always like to start with a bent knee down dog because it takes the hamstrings out of it, and they're usually the tightest part. So if you put your legs straight right away, pretty much the rest of your alignment goes completely kaput. So if you take the hamstrings out, you can align your hands properly, your wrists,
your shoulders, your spine, your head, all the way down to the hips. And then from there, you can walk the dog, bending one knee at a time, straightening one leg at a time. With your breath, ideally, we want to work to coordinate with our breath and movement. And in yoga practice, we always want to try to breathe through our nose. There are a few exceptions, but generally breathing in and out of the nose allows you to be more in control of your breath. Now let's come forward into a plank. Now this is actually a challenging pose, and I recommend to have your knees down if it all has any pain in the low back, or if it's just too stressful on your body or mind. So just holding this position if you can. And then back to a downward dog. Now one thing we can forget to relax in downward dog is our heels. So one thing I like to do is to lift the heels up, which stretches out the toes nicely as well, but then let the heels down. And that stretches out the calves, and this is really the position we want. But then let's lift our heels up again. And that just really emphasizes that movement and what we should be doing in our heels. Bring some consciousness there. Now from here, we bend the knees, look forward, and then just walk the feet forward. And then we're going to come up into, we call this flat back position. Now flat back position is an important position because we use it in the sun salutation flow and in the vinyasa and in a number of poses. And it's basically finding your natural spinal position, but in a different plane. So usually our spine is vertical when we're standing, but now we're finding a vertical spine in a forward fold. And then from here, we bend the knees, again taking the hamstrings out of it, allows us to hinge the hips more deeply, and then we can relax over the legs, relax the arms and head, release the neck. And now we get a nice traction from gravity. So we have to make sure that our head is lower than our hips, because sometimes I see this position and then you don't get that traction. So you got to keep the hips higher up. And then you might shake it out a little bit. Some people like to hug around there. Really flexible people can even straighten their legs while keeping their chest on the thighs. And then fingertips down. You want to keep the right foot forward. We're going to take the left foot way back. And we call this a low lunge. Now there's a lot of different lunges. There's at least 10 different lunges, and we alternate through them in this class. This is an important one. It's just a basic low lunge with the hands down. To make it easier, you can have hands on blocks. If you need to have the back knee down, you can, but that's a different lunge, and we will get to that. Now, if you like, you could come up onto your thighs. A bit of a tuck to the tailbone so that you don't kind of hyperextend in the low back. So tucking the tailbone, engage the core. You might be able to come up from there. Try not to rise up, though. Stay nice and low. You eventually want to keep this horizontal. You might even reach up if that's comfortable for you, or you could put a little support into the thigh or blocks. Okay, and then hands down. Now we're going to lower that back knee down. And this is a little bit of a different lunge, but it's very much the same in alignment. We want the hips square to the front, sink the hips forward, and you can stay there or come up on your thigh or even reach up high. Totally up to you. I should mention too, the back toes don't have to be tucked. They could be pointed. Okay, and coming out of the kneeling lunge, tuck if you aren't, hop the back leg forward, and then come into that flat back position we just did a moment ago. And then fold from there if you can with straight legs. If you can't, bend your knees. Then hands down. Now we want to keep the left foot forward, take your right foot back. Try to keep your left toes relaxed. Maybe you can come up onto your thigh. Keep that right hip forward, but still reach back through that right inner heel. You might be able to come up even more, maybe reaching. And hands down. Lower the back knee. But watch that this doesn't happen. See how far my knee came forward? Now my hip's over my knee. So keep that leg way back. Now we're in that kneeling lunge, sinking the hips forward. I'll show you that movement in case that sounds obscure. So sinking the hips forward. If you're in this position, sinking the hips forward. Maybe coming up. Maybe even reaching up. Okay, and then hopping that back leg forward. Inhale to flat back extension. Exhale to fold. And firm the legs. Inhale, sweep wide and up. Exhale. Namaste. Okay, shake it off. If you need a little swig of water, get a little swig of water. So I call that the sun salutation warm-up or the beginner warm-up. So we did 2 warm-ups and it's like halfway through the class. So I really believe an emphasis on warming up for things to make sure your body's ready and prepared for the practice. And then you can do some amazing stuff. But this part is where it starts to get a little bit more vigorous. If you need to take a break at any point, take a break. I recommend clearing your mat if you had a blanket or something. And this part you shouldn't need a block for. We take a wide stance on the mat. This first position, stretching the hips. Pressing the outside edges of the feet mostly here, and the feet are parallel. But now we're going to change that a little bit. The left foot turns in slightly, and the right foot turns out 90 degrees. And the heels should be on the same line. Some yoga mats actually have all these geometric patterns, and you can see if your heels are in the right line. Those are pretty cool. Take your arms up, tone the back leg, and then arms wide, warrior 2. Warrior 2, we want the back leg toned, and the arch of the back foot should stay lifted. If this collapses like that, it goes right into the knee. And you might take a break by straightening that front leg for a moment, but we're going to come into position with the forearm down or the hand to the floor or block. The arm comes over an extended side angle. Common mistake I see all the time because it's very similar to a variation of triangle where you reach up. So I see this all the time. But this one, it's like a straight line from the outer edge of your foot through the body to the tips of the fingers, and then your gaze goes in that direction as well. Now we're going to press up, but as you come up, try not to put any more weight in your right foot. So slowly draw yourself up without any more weight in that foot. Good. Okay, hands to the hips, right toes in, left toes out. Again, find that same line for the heels. Reaching up, tone the back leg continuously, bend the left leg, arms wide. Warrior 2, keep your belly engaged, your abs toned. Left. Don't forget to keep your arch intact, your back leg toned, your left toes soft. Maybe straightening your front leg for a moment. The left forearm is going to come down, right arm over top, an extended side angle. And Anchor from your back leg, draw yourself up, turn your left toes in, and feet parallel. Now, take your hands behind you and interlace. Now, it tends to be safer in the shoulders if when you interlace, you keep the palms together rather than letting the palms come apart in this. So if you like, it is harder though. Okay, so you're rolling the shoulders back, lift the chest, tone the legs, and then start to hinge forward with that flat back position. Now you can hold this flat back position. You'll be feeling a stretch in the hamstrings, a tone in the core and the back. If you want to though, you can go a little lower, round a bit, and draw the arms over top. See if you can do it with your palms together to work harder. And inhale, draw yourself up to standing. Hands to the hips, bring your heels in. And then interlacing the fingers, but this time we're going to reverse that interlacing. So I have a different thumb on top, different baby finger on the bottom, and then turning the palms forward. Take the knees wide as you sit down into goddess or horse stance. Now this is the one exception, well, one of the exceptions to breathing through the nose. You can breathe out the mouth if you want to try this. Inhale, we reach up, grab this imaginary post, and exhale through the mouth, press it down into the ground. Good. And then pressing the legs straight for a moment. Now we're going to turn the heels out. We're going to go into what I call wide-legged downward facing dog. So it's basically downward dog from here up, but the legs stay as they are. So hold forward, bring the hands forward into a downward dog position. If you don't know what downward dog is, I apologize. Try to just look and see what I'm doing. Now you might be getting a great stretch like this. This one you could hold for a long time and get a lot of benefit. But if you can go deeper, you could fold, bring the crown of the head towards the floor. Or again, continue to hold. Also flat back position. The hands down below the shoulders is nice to hold out for long periods of time. Then we're going to come up. You might bring your feet in, tuck the tailbone, rise up. And bring the feet in the rest of the way. Okay. Another opportunity to get a little sip of water if you want. Okay, and then we're going to start with a chair pose, and then we're working our way down to the floor. So chair pose, we bend the knees, sit back, reach forward, possibly even taking it a little further, curving up. Try to keep the toes relaxed here. There is a toning of the core, so you're not dumping your belly forward. And exhale, straightening the legs, fold over if you need to, bend the knees. Plant the hands, step, walk, or jump back into a plank or kneeling plank. And you could go to chaturanga, or coming into cobra or up dog, and then back through to downward facing dog. We've worked on all the different elements of a sun salutation, but we're not going to do a full sun salutation today. We'll get into that next week. But you did learn all the components. So bringing the feet a little closer together. Let's take our right leg up and over. Scorpion tail position. Now from here, we're going to swing that leg forward for pigeon pose. This is pose a lot of people love because it really can open up the hip nicely. I actually prefer what it does for the left hip, and I really love the back bending version of it. But you can stay upright, or you can take it deeper in the hip by going forward. Now, I typically like to hold this one twice as long because the hips, there's a lot of different connections of muscles and tendons all through there. It equals a lot of tightness. So I want to hold out a little longer. Now from here, we're going to come back through. If you know a vinyasa, you know the vinyasa, you could throw that in there right now. But otherwise, we're in downward dog. We're bringing the feet a little closer together. And left leg comes up and over. And swing that leg forward into pigeon pose. Square the hips to the front, tuck up the tailbone and extension through the back leg. Long spine, you might stay up or go forward. Okay, and then coming back through downward facing dog. And then from here, we walk the feet forward and a bit wide, bend the knees, and see if you can sit back. This is called Malasana, or garland pose. If you need to, you could have your hands behind you. For some bodies, this can be a challenging position, but I find that with practice, most people can gain some good headway in this pose pretty quickly. Okay, and then taking a seat, sit in about the middle of the mat, catch hold behind the hamstrings. We want to balance on the two sits bones and the tailbone, so you have a bit of a tripod going on, and then extend the arms, leaning back. You don't have to go anywhere from here. You could hold this and get a nice tone. But if you can lift your feet, that can take you further. Go even further, taking your arms forward. Full poses, the legs forward. I'll just hold here today. And now see you can come down to a nice, we call it Baddha Konasana, cobbler's seat. Now you can keep the feet there and see if you can go forward towards your toes. You can round the spine, but also hinge the hips. If you want, though, to make it a little easier, bring the feet further forward. Then you can usually hinge the hips a little more easily and get a little more forward. Now, this next pose is the one that I recommend you spend time working on, especially if you're newer to yoga, but everybody could really benefit from doing this every day, just sitting wide-legged, sitting up tall. This helps to stretch all three hamstring bands on both sides, lengthens the calves, strengthens the back, strengthens the core. It's all back and core, very connected, but strengthens all that, strengthens the spine. And if you want to work even harder, you reach up. Now it's working up through the shoulders, upper back.
of my life goals is to be able to sit just for as long as I want in this position, completely comfortably with a long spine. And it's been a long journey, but I'm getting close, and it feels really great as I'm getting closer and closer. Now we're going to come to a reclined position in a moment, so I'll show you what it's going to look like first if you haven't seen this before. Okay, so before you go back, just watch. So we're going to lie back in the elbows, so we can press the back of the elbows into the floor and lift up into a little bridge. Okay, so coming on back on your back. Draw the feet in so you can just touch your heels. Have your feet parallel here. And press the back of the elbows into the floor and lift the hips. And slowly lowering from here. Now, one way to stir up your practice is to take your usual practice and do everything twice. That's something that you can do. We're going to do that particular pose we just did twice. But if you want, if you're open enough for it today, you could do a full wheel instead. If you don't know what a full wheel is, then don't worry about it today. But coming up again, second pose of little bridge. We're checking out a full wheel. Keep the weight balanced in the feet. All four corners of both feet equal. Toes relaxed. Okay, and then lowering slowly down to the floor, hugging your knees in towards you. And taking the knees a little wider. Feel free to stay here. This might not be possible for everybody, but if you can, grab your ankles or feet or big toe. This is called happy baby pose. We've all seen a baby doing this, having a great time. I don't think I've ever seen a baby doing this who's crying or having a bad time. So happy baby is a pretty apt name for this pose. All right, then from here, we're going to press our legs up towards the ceiling. Now, if you have a block, that can add an additional element that supports the nervous system by putting a block under your hips. That's part of the reason why I recommend getting a block too, is there's some therapeutic expressions of poses that you can do with blocks and straps and bolsters and blankets that you can't do without it. You could say it's a different style of yoga when you add in a lot of different props, but I believe it's a very holistic approach to be able to practice in a number of different ways, gain different benefits from different approaches. And let's slowly lower the feet back down to the floor. Lift the hips and shift them a bit to the right. Then we extend the left leg with the toes pointed, the right foot gently over the left knee or behind or across. The left hand's going to grab the right leg, the right arm reaches out, and then let the arm draw the leg over as you look to the right. Now, one tendency in this pose, or one thing that tends to happen in this pose, is that this right hip tends to fall in towards your ribs, so it kind of collapses in this way. So we want to keep pressing it down. So think of dropping your right hip down towards your left foot. Flat so that you can shift your hips over to the left side.
And then the right leg extends, toes pointed, left foot gently over the right knee. Then left arm out, right hand across the left, and draw the leg over, looking to the left. And again, the left hip now might be collapsing up towards your left ribs, left shoulder. So draw that left hip down. For me, I notice that it happens more on my right side than my left. It's good just to notice that sort of stuff so you can just get a deeper understanding of your body mapping, how your body works. All right. Going back to the center, one last squeeze in here, which if you can reach your knees to your forehead, you could take this last squeeze as a plow pose or Karma Pidasana tortoise pose. These are, you could say, fairly challenging. I like to use the word advanced because some people can just do them immediately without any practice. So sometimes it's a matter of flexibility, but it is a pose that isn't accessible to a lot of bodies, so feel free to skip it and just take a nice kind of like upside down baby, hugging the knees. And then slowly releasing the feet to the floor. We're going to do a few minutes in Shavasana, and then we're going to do an optional few minutes in meditation. I know not everybody necessarily wants to meditate, but if you do, you'll have that option at the end. You could also just do a longer Shavasana. So this is the position I like because it helps to support the low back, makes the spine really comfortable, and I can relax my hips even more than when my legs are straight. But if you prefer legs straight, go for it. If you want to scoot to a wall and take your legs up the wall, this is another good way to finish a class such as this. One of my favorites too is if I have a chair, I put my legs on the chair like that. Whatever position you're in, it should be as effortless as possible, if not completely effortless. And you should be moving towards a state of relaxation, mindfulness, consciousness, body awareness, and towards stillness. So finding that position, let's go for just a couple minutes. Deep relaxation, moving towards stillness. Now I'm going to start to come out of the pose, but like I said, feel free to stay longer. I'd recommend staying longer in the pose if you have the chance, if you have the time. If you are starting to come out nice and slow. Spend at least a few breaths on your right side. This has an effect on your nervous system, so it allows you to keep as much of the calmness that we achieve through that whole practice. As you come up, see if you can allow your head to follow instead of lead the way, so it's like the last thing that comes up. And that just allows you to keep that real deep state of relaxation. Now find a comfortable seated position if you want to join me in meditation. If you have to go, or meditation isn't something you're interested in at this point, then thank you for coming. Hope to see you next time. Namaste. If you're joining me for this meditation, find a comfortable seated position. If your legs are relaxed down on the floor like this and you're able to sit up tall, you can get away with just sitting on the floor like this. If you're more like this, you're going to want to sit up on some height, possibly even getting some pillows for your knees to rest into. But we're not going to be meditating too long, so even if you're in a not that sustainable of a position, 3 minutes is all we have to sustain it for anyway. So sitting up tall, relaxing the shoulders. Just going to turn the music down for this. Bring your awareness to your breath, feeling that natural process of breathing. In yoga, we have pranayama, which is breath control, but this is just mindful breathing meditation. So let your breath be natural, normal. But notice the quality of your breath. Is it choppy? Is it smooth? Is it deep or shallow? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it moist? Is it dry? Noticing the quality of your breath without judgment, without trying to change it. Just noticing and relaxing. We'll go for a couple minutes with just this mindful breath awareness. If you want to work in a little bit more of a challenging way, turning it up in a way, instead of focusing just on your whole breath experience, focus on your breath in this tiny area of your nose and just above your lip. Focusing your mind into a more sharp point really makes the concentration deepen. So focusing on that small area, or just focusing on your breath, feeling it wherever it's most prominent to you. Okay, there's another juncture where if you wish to wrap up your practice, you could. But if I just launched you into a great meditation, please stick with it. And I'll join you all again in a meditation next week.
I like to meditate a little bit before the class, so if you want to join in a bit before class, then we'll meditate together. And if you have any questions about anything we covered today, please feel free to send me a question. You can send it directly to me or through some of the coordinators. You could send me to kungayogi@hotmail.com if you like. If you have any comments or questions, you can send it to me there. Thank you again. See you next time. Namaste.